Hello, good evening.
Yeah, wonderful. You're back. So we'll just be
Yeah.
about a minute and we'll, we'll start. We allow the banner flow. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is anybody here yet?
Hold on. Yes, they are here. No, you won't hear that. Just give it a minute, please.
Oh, okay.
All right. So we'll be starting in about 30 seconds. I'll just allow the timer to proceed. All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful. So the hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to another special edition of the EDUCONVO. You see, tonight we are going to be diving into something that is so fun, interesting, on the minds of many millions of parents around Africa and Nigeria, especially, and on also teachers' minds and educators. It is a topic on tutoring. In today's world, tutoring that actually works. And who better to chat with on tutoring than the phenomenal Mrs. Ifewumi Onunkwo? You see, but before we get down deep, I'd like to ask you just this interesting question. You see, if your teaching style were a Nigerian dish, what do you think it would be and why?
Um, I would say it would be the Nigerian jollof. Why? Because who doesn't love the Nigerian jollof? Everybody loves jollof. Or just for a select few that would say it is because it's too spicy and all. But Nigerian jollof is deeply satisfying. You can make it using different methods. You can add meats, different strategies to it to make it come out to just varying taste. So tutoring is also like that. Even if this person says he doesn't like the way the party jollof is tasting. You can make it regular, we call it MTN jollof rice. So there's always something about the Nigerian jollof that is going to feed the palate of everybody that you just cannot resist. So tutoring to me is like that Nigerian jollof rice.
Oh, that is really really great. I really appreciate the fact that you said it can be made in so many different ways. I think that goes a long way to taking different needs of everybody, all while making the dish palatable and enjoyable. So that's actually interesting. Jollof rice. And let's get down to business. You see, today we're discussing about tutoring in the 21st century, how we can bridge that gap in personalized education. So I'd like to ask you, when we start talking about tutoring in Nigeria, some people, their mind goes straight to lesson teachers. So do you have a tutor? Oh, I have a lesson teacher. But in your experience, do you think that image of tutors being lesson teachers, do you think it is accurate or is something that is outdated in our century?
It's
What do you think?
it, it's pretty outdated because when you think about what personalized education should be, just saying your lesson teacher is just like it's a lesson teacher is like I feel like you're bringing down what the person is doing, the value of that person, of that teacher, of that tutor. You're bringing down the value. Why lesson teachers, as we call them here in Nigeria, they focus more on assignments, drilling, the one size fits for education. Tutoring has gone beyond that. It's about understanding the unique learning style of the student. It's about meeting the students where they are. It's about building confidence. It's about filling years of learning gaps, which, if you go through the route of traditional education, it's a one size fits. And tutoring is trying to bridge that gap between the learner and education itself.
You know, I really appreciate what you mentioned about tutoring there because I have a lesson teacher growing up. I always the image in our mind, even growing up, was your lesson teacher will come and teach you what will be discussed in the next class, an upper class, or to help you out with assignments, and not really that personalized education that we also desperately need. So I like your explanation on that. It seems pretty outdated. So I think as a generation, we would need to work on that. But please tell us, you've been able to work with several students, home and abroad, the diaspora. What have you noticed? Have you noticed any differences between how Nigerian in the diaspora approach this very interesting topic of tutoring?
I have noticed two things. The first is proactiveness and perception of tutoring. Families in diaspora, they tend to see tutoring as a lifeline. They tend to see tutoring as an investment in the child's education. Whereas in Nigeria here, we have the perception that tutoring is like a patch. You're trying to mend where that child is failing, or you're just trying to drag the child along. In Nigeria, there is a tendency to see that tutoring is the last resort, and it's just for struggling children. But tutoring is not the last resort. It's not just for struggling children. And also, there are actually parents in diaspora, they tend to have a more holistic development or approach towards tutoring. They see it just as more than just you're helping this child do better here. They see it as you're helping this child develop skills. They see it as you're helping this child develop critical thinking, which goes beyond the average Nigerian view of what tutoring should be.
Oh, thank you very much for that your explanation. Because honestly, even as a kid growing up, whenever you say, "Oh, I have a lesson teacher," still using the outdated term, people start to look at you one how, "Madam, this your child. Okay, is he failing?" As an band aid to help. That's what tutoring was looked at like, and I think that's pretty much interesting. It's good to know about these differences because honestly, there is a stigma around needing a tutor. I think you've touched on that a little bit. Many families, you come home, you're not getting good grades, and the next thing is, oh, let's get you a tutor, let's get you a lesson teacher. You need to get your grades up. That is the only thing that is being looked at because at the point in time when kids are doing well, no one is ever mentioning anything about getting tutors and all of that. But why? How do you think we can be able to shift that narrative between of tutors being a band aid or a helping hand for only children that are struggling academically? What do you think we can do to change that?
Like you said, the stigma around needing a tutor is so real, and I think it comes largely from the misconception, like you said, that needing a tutor means that the child is not smart enough or the child is failing. So sometimes it's a blow to the ego for both the parents and the student itself. So to shift this narrative, I would think we need to reframe tutoring as a powerful tool for excellence, not just as a remediation tool. It's not just about patching this child up, it's about seeing the potential in these students, building these students up, helping these students get ahead, helping these students build a solid foundation. It's like having a personal trainer for your brain. Like, even though athletes, they have a coach that coach them, like when they're playing footballs, basketball players, they have a general coach that teaches them all. But they still have personal trainers to help them get ahead or help them get better. So we need to have a more should I say, holistic view of what tutoring is. It's not just that your child is failing. You're helping this child to get ahead. You're helping this child to do better. If we are to reframe tutoring in that sense, I think it will help shift the narrative from what we know it to be and what tutoring is evolving to be right now.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful thoughts from you, Mrs. Ife. I really appreciate that, especially the use of athletes. And true, all of them have personal trainers. It's not that they are not good, but they have personal trainers to keep improving and being the best version of themselves. And what an interesting narrative as to how tutors actually help us to be the best version of ourselves. I think that's something that our listeners and even our lovely Nigerian parents will want to put into consideration. But now focus more on the personalizing aspect, the personalization when it comes to tutoring, as it differs from having a lesson teacher. You see, we talked a lot about meeting learners where they are, but what does that actually look like in your session?
Um, when I talk about meeting my learners where they are, the parents usually get confused and just like, for me, it really means listening to that student. Because in the traditional classroom setting, I think that's what is missing. We don't listen to our students. We're just there to do garbage in, garbage out. So when I meet my students where they are, I am listening, I am observing, I am assessing them. And this goes beyond just their academic scores or where I want them to be. It looks like I'm having an open ended question, understanding their interest outside of academics, identifying their preferred learning styles. For some, you can have a visual learner, you can have an auditory learner, you can have a kinesthetic learner. So meeting them where they are is about tailoring whatever you are teaching to fit their pace, to move at their pace. Because the truth is, if a learner is not ready to learn, you cannot force that learner. And if you try to go faster, you're only going to slow that learner back. So you need to work at the pace of that learner, not just running through the scheme of work, the curriculum for the session. No, it's about if the student is moving at the pace of, like we say, a snail, it's about going along with that child. The end goal shouldn't be for your child to score first, get second. It should be for your child to be able to retain and use that knowledge in the real world. So if you're not able to work at the pace of that child, you're going to miss it.
Oh, lovely thoughts again from you, Mrs. Ife. It's when it's we're talking about meeting uh, the students where they are by listening to them. Hmm. It's actually a bit tricky and challenging there because the traditional system of education in Nigeria, it's not meant or it's not built to give voices to these children or to these people in educational institutions. As you said, garbage in, garbage out. This is what we learned. This is how I was taught. Oh yeah, take it. Do you understand? Yes. Good. So it's actually difficult to understand these various learners. You mentioned kinesthetic, visual learners. That is true. That is true. And I think it's also important, as you mentioned, for parents to know that the main point of their sending their children to school is not to get first position. I think that puts undue pressure on the children, and we see children doing more cramming and cramming instead of actually learning, just because they want to be first, not because they actually want to be better people or to improve themselves. So thank you very much. Now, I know you've been discussing it for, you've been tutoring for quite a while now. Is it possible you can maybe give us an example of a time that you saw that a student needed something different than what was taught or what was suggested by the traditional curriculum?
Yeah, I have this current student located in Ontario currently. She's a very smart kid. You know, she can solve problems when you give her equations and all, but she's struggling with the why. You know, when we are taught math in school, we just thought 1 plus 1 equals to 2, 2 plus 2 equals to 4. We're not really taught how to apply that knowledge into the real world. For instance, my mom gives me 5 naira and my dad gives me 5 naira. How much do I have? We're not really taught how to transfer that knowledge from the classroom into the real world. So now we're doing this in class, but she ends up saying that, ma'am, I don't understand this. Why am I doing this? She didn't really understand why she is learning this. How is this applying to how is this going to benefit her in the long run? So I realized that she was a super visual and kinesthetic learner. So instead of just walking through, your textbook says we should learn order of operations, your textbook says we should learn algebra 2, your textbook says this. I had to start drawing out concepts for her, use storytelling, then using members of her family. This person gives you this person says you should do this, you go to the mall, you get a discount, helping her incorporate everyday objects and even acting out the word problems by things that she can already see around her. Now the curriculum was offering math equations, but she
Okay.
needed a narrative, a tangible experience, something she can narrate to, or should I say relate to. So when I was able to switch this up,
Mm.
moving just from textbooks to real life, it changed the should I say the learning experience for her. So even if we have to go over a concept up to 7 times, at the end of the day, she's able to apply that knowledge to the real world.
Oh, that's wonderful, wonderful. Because honestly, some things I was taught in secondary school, I'm not that old, but I've not seen their use now. But I think yes, it's going to be beautiful to be able to see the practical application of what you're actually learning. I think that would be able to stimulate many people to actually take up this learning. And what you said is true. You might not be good with math, but not in the way that the normal traditional system would expect. If you give her money now, she might be good counting the money and doing all of that. But it's good you're able to draw from that practical line and bring it into the classroom, so to say, to improve her learning outcomes. And that is very much wonderful. Thank you very much. But then, you see, we have a problem, especially here in Nigeria. You see, in Nigeria that we are, classrooms, especially government uh, classrooms, government schools, you go to their classrooms, they are so overcrowded, very much overcrowded and under resourced. We see that there are not enough teachers, not enough material, resources. Many of the schools do not even have a computer lab, for example, in this digital age, and many of them cannot even do something as simple as turn on a PC or even open Microsoft Word. But how can, as a tutor, how do you think you can personalize learning despite all of these challenges we see without the magic ones, or what we would call unlimited resources? Because even as a tutor, your resources have limits, have caps. But how do you think we can maximize that to ensure that we achieve personalized learning even in Nigeria today?
Well, we do not have a magic wand to do abracadabra and everything will just change. I think we can be resourceful. Think a large part of the issues with the traditional classroom is we do not want to, or should I not say we do not want to be resourceful? We do not know how to be resourceful. Now, we might not know how to use tech, or we might not even fancy tech, because the truth is, in a lot of classrooms today, we have aged, should I not, let me not use aged, let me use advanced in age teachers in their late 40s, early 50s, currently in most classrooms. Now, there are not a lot of young people who, should I say, are tech savvy in this generation being teachers, in all honesty. So these advanced
Mm.
teachers may not really comprehend or know how to, or even fancy using tech. But we can use real life examples. We can encourage peer to peer learning, not just the one size fit learning for all. We can leverage the little resources that we have and use our creativity to walk through it. It's about empowering the student to take ownership of their learning, even in small ways, such as setting mini goals, celebrating their progress. This can go a long way in helping a child to do better. It's not just about, at the end of the day, this is your average score. It's about helping the student to see that what you are learning now, exam is not the true test of knowledge. Can you apply this knowledge in the real world? So even if we don't have computers to do all those things, we have markets that we go to, we have cobblers around us. We have architects around us. Can your students use the protractor properly? Can they draw things? Those are ways that we can leverage what we have. We have students that are interested in agriculture. We are very rich in agriculture. Do we have a farm in the school? Can we show the student how to make ridges? So not every child will be tech savvy, but we can leverage on those things we have. We have woods around us, nails, gums. Can we try building something? So we can leverage everything we have around us creatively. And I think if we start to be resourceful, the game in the classroom for most schools is going to change, not just by relying on technology alone, by using what we have at hand.
Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Efe, for your insights on that. And I really, really appreciate that the fact you said exam is not the true test of knowledge. And that is actually true. We've seen people who are the best of the best when it comes to in school and all of that, and they come to the real world, and like you said, they don't make themselves useful, or they are thrown off guard. So yes, I think schools. I appreciate what you meant, what you said about farming, for instance. It is true that not every school is privileged in Nigeria or has the opportunity to be tech savvy, and not every of our teachers. But we have resources in other areas that we can inculcate and bring in and make these children resourceful. Having a farm, I think one of the things I remember during my time in school was when we were asked to bring rabbits. You know, we did practicals on the rabbits, and even today, I think it helped me a few weeks ago when I was preparing item 7. Yes, but that just goes to show the application of what we learn in school and how we can be resourceful. Thank you very, very much on that. Really appreciate your great thoughts and insights. But then sometimes we hear a lot of stories, uh, thoughty stories, myths about personalized learning, especially from parents when they come and say, "Oh, my child doesn't very bright." What are some myths that you've heard about personalized learning? Some things that were not actually correct coming from the parents.
One of the most common one is that, how would my child learn online? That my child won't be learning everything as everyone else. Or some will believe that, like we said earlier, tutoring is for struggling children, tutoring is for children with disabilities. One thing I always tell parents is, tutoring is just personalized learning. Simply put, finding the best way for your child to learn, which means we are making your child learn in the area where they are most comfortable with. So when parents come to say that, no, my child is not struggling, no, I just need you to, like, ma, there are different areas to learning that we can assess your child in other ways. It might not be struggling in the area you think, but there are other areas where your child can struggle. For instance, I had a parent who said her child was so good in English, she didn't have any problem with English. I told the parent that, English can be broken down into different facets, right? We have
Hmm.
comprehension, we have spellings, we have reading. She was like, oh, she didn't know. So the child was able to read quite right, but the child was not able to bring back that knowledge. For instance, you give her a passage, she can answer the question, but tell her to relate what she has learned we found that she was having issues with comprehension. So it's not just about that you are not learning or your child is for, it's not just for children with disabilities. So if we're able to change that narrative, I think it's a myth at this point. We need to pull a legend on, but progressively, I believe it will shift.
No, I hope, I actually do hope that it will shift, and that's interesting. Thank you very much for your insights as well. So, tutoring is not only for children that are struggling. Everyone needs a tutor, perhaps, and maybe I can also me on some areas later on. But yeah, let's talk about our students now, those that you with. What are some of these challenges that you see, unique challenges that they face when we're looking at Nigerian students studying abroad?
One of the unique challenges we face beyond the academic transitions for these students is that they often grapple with a clash of educational philosophies. Um, Abroad, yeah, there's a more collaborative, inquiry-based approach to learning for the Western schools, unlike the Nigerian style of teaching. So the children might
Mm.
struggle with identity, fitting in, maintaining their cultural ties. Yeah, they are telling you must get first, you must get. But there they are telling you, you don't need to get first. You just need to understand how this works. So you're coming home to a parent who is telling you, why are you not getting first? But the child understands. Can this child do this? So mixing the parents at home, the traditional way of learning, going to the school can significantly impact the confidence of that child. And this shows up in my sessions a lot because sometimes these students have a reluctance to ask questions because the parents are put in the mind, Nigerian teachers are harsh. Then we do, but then you're going over to that place and you're saying the teacher is telling you, it's okay, your mistakes are understandable. Why did you do this? I have a parent who told me that you should be harsh on this girl. If you're not harsh, you will not learn. So this child comes to the class with this fear. But I'm not being harsh on you. So a lot of that over time, we try to work with it. But those are some of the challenges that we face there.
Or- I can imagine the whole scene like that. So, things like that. Yeah, sorry about that. I think I'm having a little bit of network issues on my end. But yeah, I really appreciate, all the points that you are bringing because traditionally we are not built or we are not taught to really ask those questions to our teachers. So the clash, the teaching, the method of teaching, that's a very good point you made, Mrs. Ife. But how do issues like identity, bringing it home, language, or confidence, have you seen any issues with that as you carry on tutoring these children? Mrs. Ife, can you hear me? All right, we seem to have lost a little bit of audio. Okay. Look, can you hear me, Mrs.
Yes, I
Ife?
can hear you now.
Okay. Seems there's still an issue. But I was asking a question. I said, have you ever seen issues when bordering identity, language, and confidence creep up while tutoring these children?
Yes, because unlike the traditional way of learning where we are taught to keep quiet, the teacher knows it all, the Western mode of learning is not like that. The students there are taught to challenge the teacher's ideas. They are encouraged to ask questions. So a Western school might encourage the student to openly challenge the teacher's idea, which to a Nigerian is going to feel disrespectful due to our cultural perspective that why is this small boy challenging me? He does not know that I'm older than him and all. So when I started tutoring, it felt that way at some point, but then I was like, this is a different narrative. This is a different cultural setting. And I actually liked that way of teaching because it makes me buckle up, prepare extra. I now try to think like my students. What would this child ask me? This thing I'm teaching this child, how would it help this child? What would this child be thinking? So I navigate this by teaching them how to engage respectfully. For instance, instead of just saying, I don't understand it, why do you say, Miss, can you slow down a bit? I'm a bit lost here. Can you go over this again? So when they now my students are able to respectfully and critically ask me questions without sounding disrespectful. So I think it's about finding a balance and helping them to find their own voice through asking thoughtful questions and also explaining the cultural context of both environments. So, for instance, when I'm meeting the students for the first time, I try to explain my cultural background to the students.
Okay.
So, if I'm saying this, the student is understanding that okay, this is why I am saying. Students in the Western region, when they come to class, they don't greet. They're like, "Hi, hello," and to me, I'm like,
So,
come on, will you not say good evening, ma? But over time, I just learned that hi and hello to them is their good evening, and they are not being disrespectful, but that's just the way they are over there.
Mrs. Ife, if you can hear me, I would want you to quickly rejoin, but because on my end, it seems uh, I can't hear you quite well. All right, can you go ahead?
Hello?
Yes, wonderful. Now we can hear you loud and clear. So please, could you go over your points again? Sorry about that.
Oh, so I believe the questions you asked me then, due to the network glitches, balancing expectations between the Western and Nigerian cultural values, right?
Yes, yes, yes. We're talking. I was asking about issues that might have come up with identity, language, or confidence during your tutoring sessions with these kids.
Oh, okay. So with like I said earlier, the Western world encouraged the students to own themselves. Be true to yourself. When someone is
Mm.
telling you this, challenge the idea. So they encourage them to openly challenge the teacher's idea. Why is the teacher teaching me this? How is this going to benefit me? Which to an average Nigerian is how can a 9-year-old be asking me why is this so? Come on, sit down. I'm older than you. Even in the classroom back then, when you ask your teacher a question, after some time they tell you, come on, keep quiet and sit down. I am the teacher. I will tell you what you should know.
Mm.
So, over
Yes,
there,
that's true.
it is not seen as being disrespectful due to the cultural perspective. So I navigate this by teaching them how to respectfully ask questions, rather than just barge into a conversation or just throw your question out there. I teach my students how to pause, like, and say, Mrs. Ife, can you? This is a little confusing. So it's about finding the
Mm.
balance and empowering them to be able to use their voice ask thoughtful questions, and then also try to explain the cultural difference. For instance, when I'm meeting a student for the first time, I try to explain my own cultural background to the student so that when I say certain things, they don't misinterpret it. They already know, oh, in this is the first country, home country, this is how these things are said. For instance, when they come into the classroom, you're like, hi, hello. To me, why is the little child telling me hi, hello? Why can you not just say good evening, ma'am? So finding a balance between these two has helped to be a bridge.
Oh, thank you very much. I think the balance is very much needed between respect and actually being inquisitive and confident. And it's be a quick one and an important one to discuss. Now, have you ever had to balance Western schooling expectations with Nigerian values? My child must be first. Have you ever have you ever had to balance that on the topic of
Hello?
balancing? Can you hear me?
Okay, I didn't get the question.
Okay, the question was since we're still on the topic of balancing, have you ever needed to
You're
balance
glitching.
expectations expectations of Western schooling with Nigeria cultural values, such as one as my child must come first?
Hello? Hello?
Okay. All right. Let me try this. Yes. Can you hear me, Mrs. Ifa?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. For a second, I lost you. I wasn't hearing what you said.
Okay. I was asking, yeah, since we're still talking about balancing, have you ever had to balance the expectations of schooling abroad? Oh, my child is schooling abroad. Oh, he must come first in this. He must do this with normal uh, Nigerian cultural values. Has that happened before?
Yes. Like I said earlier, the Nigerian cultures, the Western culture teach the children to ask, unlike the Nigerian culture, which we don't teach our children to ask. So even if the children are from Nigeria, schooling over there does not make your child any less of being a Nigerian. So helping these children to understand that here you have to sit up, you have to ask thoughtful questions, you have to think critically, and helping the parents see how to merge the two has really helped me. But also explaining the cultural context to the children too has helped in, should I say, keeping the parents' minds at ease.
Mm, thank you. Because I think my mind will not be at ease looking at the cost of Western education. I would naturally expect the best possible from my child. Good. But what do you think it's something parents in the diaspora should stop doing, and one thing they should start doing to support their kids?
Um, there's this mentality that a lot of Nigerians, or should I not limit it to Nigerians? I think Africans, we have a tendency to compare our children, even between siblings, between your neighbor. Are you not seeing Mama Tolani's child is doing first? So even though we've crossed borders, that mentality has also crossed along with us, that we unintentionally start to compare their children, especially due to their Nigerian counterparts. There's a parent that we're currently tutoring in Maryland, US. She will tell you, back home in Nigeria, you will carry your school bag and your back will bend. Do you know how many assignments they give us? And you are here. Do you think, I have to tell her that she needs to understand that the climate has changed. You don't need to keep comparing to what you've left. You need to start focusing on developing this child's independent thinking, because in Nigeria we have diminished the independent thinking of children, and your child is here. Leave the backpack, leave the loads of assignments. Help your child acclimatize, help your child develop how to think independently, how to voice out their opinions. This would also help the child from bullying, because if your child is not able to speak for themselves, they're not able to voice out what they think, they will lag behind naturally, because they would want to, even when they don't understand, they won't say it. So they need to stop comparing and now trying to help their children rather adapt.
I think that's true. That's really really true because back in school we always pressured, bring all your books to school. Oh, a teacher will come and tell you, I will use your free period and things like that. And it doesn't really happen as much over there. So the need for them to acclimatize, as you mentioned, is really really important. Become more supportive and living the bad practices in the past, as it were, moving forward. Thank you very much on that. Now, talking about support, we know that since you're focused on online tutoring, what do you do to keep your kids engaged? Because even I find it challenging myself to stick to one thing when I'm online. Before you know, a message or a notification, and I'm all over the place. How do you keep them engaged online?
For one thing, our tutoring sessions, I usually recommend to parents that it should not go beyond 1 hour due to attention span. Some parents want 2 hours, but I say no. Whatever your child needs to learn, they can learn it for that one topic in that 1 hour. And what has helped me keep them engaged also is interactive whiteboards. Um, I use gamifications such as quizzes, we play virtual games, rewards, there are frequent check-ins. Like in my class, you cannot just be there and not do nothing. So you're either writing, you're either watching, you're either actively solving, you are doing mental math. So there's no period for like 2 3 minutes where you are not actively doing something. Because if there are long spaces of time in your class where they are not doing something, they tend to want to navigate on their screen and do something else. So I use short bursts of direct instructions, then a quick activity, discussion. So it's like you're not just talking to a robot, or you're not just interacting with a computer, should I call it robot too? You're talking with a live human. You're having a discussion with a friend. And I also use real world experience that resonates with them. For instance, now, if you are in Canada, I try to learn about some of the states in Canada so that if I'm giving experience, I'll not be calling Ojota for you. That way, the child can relate to because they travel to these places. If I'm teaching a student in UK, I try to learn a little about UK so that when I'm teaching you, I call this place. Have you been? You're like, yes, I've been there. Try to relate to the child. Use games. My whiteboard is always being displayed, so there's never a dull time in my class.
Oh, that would be wonderful, wonderful. I think it's anyway on some levels or some fronts. A shame I no longer have the age bracket for your tutoring right now. I actually love games. I think gamified learning it's part of the future when it comes to education because I've learned a lot from games than I did in some classes. If I'm being honest with you, critical thinking too, and all that comes with it. So thank you very much on that. You see, but we know you just mentioned some of the heavy lifting that you do, having to learn about cities. You try to personalize this education, so even your references, your teaching style, everything. That must be a lot of work and research. How do you do it? How do you keep your spark alive? I know some people, some people will just burn out. But what do you do to keep that spark alive, Mrs. Effect?
Um, First of all, I celebrate my own small wins, like little victories. If you're teaching a child, and let's say your goal for this child is to be able to read up to the level of a grade 3 learner, but at the end of the 6 weeks duration that you've given, this child is not there. There's a tendency to feel defeated. So instead of focusing on the end goal, I try to focus on the journey. I try to focus on, can this child pronounce better now? Is this child willing to read better now? Those little things help me um, keep sane from burning out. And the time difference is hell. Like, because sometimes you have to teach up to 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And doing this concurrently for months can burn even the strongest of individual out. So when I need to take breaks, I just send my parents a message that I won't be available for this day or 2 days, and I just hibernate. Because the truth is, we all need rest. A teacher who is not at full capacity is as good as an ineffective teacher. So when I come back, I am fully recharged and I am ready to teach. I also prioritize spending time with my family, going to the gym. Eating food, like when I'm having my classes, I usually have some small chops around me, be it groundnuts, be it zobo. Those things help keep you alive. And thinking about the joy that comes to the face of these children when they actualize or achieve something that they never thought that they could have achieved keeps me going and help me deal with the burnout. So it keeps the sparks alive for me.
That's wonderful. I hope there's still some chin chin and small chops so that I can pass by later. I'm fake sure, but that's good. We have to prioritize health. I think your mental health. That's why as a healthy student, you can't be worn down and then give your best or make the best impact on your students. So I do appreciate you for that. Learning to take breaks, because some of us feel, especially in Nigeria, when you're taking breaks, it's a sign of weakness. So many people do not take breaks at all. They just keep on working and working, and they overwork themselves and burn out. But it's good you're able to find that balance between work and rest and spending time with family. And I really, really appreciate you for doing that. That's a great
Thank
job
you.
you're doing, Mrs. Ifan. Well, now let's try and talk about the future on of tutoring in Nigeria. Where do you think in what direction do you think it is going forward? Is it community-based learning? Is it ed tech? Because these days we're seeing a lot of these pop up. What do you think?
I think the future is going towards more of tech integration, because if you go online now on most tutoring websites, what everybody is advertising is coding, learn how to do animations, artificial intelligence. So I feel in Nigeria it's going towards that direction. I also foresee blended learning becoming more prevalent, where online resources supplement the local in-person support. And there will be greater emphasis on critical thinking, because I know of a lot of schools here in my base where they are advertising or advocating critical thinking, learning soft skills. So it's going to move purely from just being exam focused to more skills and what you can offer focus, not just what this exam is telling this child to do. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Oh yes, I do understand what you're trying to say, because many people exam is coming. Oh yeah, lesson teacher. I know the fire on the mountain. I really do understand what you are saying, and thank you very much. And it is true, we are seeing more of tech. And then you mentioned blended learning. I think that's a new term for me. Blended learning. Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, just very briefly?
Like blended learning can also be known as, in case you hear hybrid learning, they are talking about the same thing. It's about combining your traditional face-to-face teaching, like with your teacher in the classroom, with online learning activities. So that's just the head and tail of it, combining online and the traditional learning together.
Oh, thank you. So it doesn't involve need food, but that's good. That's good. We've talked a lot about food too today, but thank you very much. So, how important do you think it is when it comes to representation in who tutors are? I think we can encourage more diversity, because what we are seeing right now is that tutoring, especially this blended learning, is being done predominantly by teachers, younger teachers. So, what can we do to diversify that to also include other groups of teachers and educators too?
For one, I think for you to change the narrative now is you need to teaching itself needs to carry a positive image, because the current image for the traditional teachers now is like for poor people, and then the traditional teachers are looking at the teachers online as the rich teachers. So now there is a class difference in between. So I think there needs to be a sensitization that we are all teachers, irrespective of where we are currently serving. And in regards to the students who see tutor who look like them, who understand their cultural context and have shared similar experiences, it tends to build trust. There's this trust that comes and a deeper connection. So I would encourage that we create more diversity by mentoring new educators, creating teaching programs that are accessible, because for the past 2 weeks, I've been coming across teaching programs that are paid for. But truth is, a lot of teachers cannot afford to pay for those training because they are really expensive. And these are teachers that know their stuff. So because of the cost in between and basically what we currently pay teachers in Nigeria, it's like you're telling them to climb a tree, which is not going to be easy. And we want to also focus on highlighting the success stories of diverse tutors. We don't want to see ourselves as competition. We want to see ourselves as we are working towards toward a collective goal. So it's about showing that this path is here, this path is viable, and it can impact everyone.
Hmm. Lovely points there again, Mrs. Ife. You're right. You're right. Trainings, especially trainings. I think yeah, these days we have a lot of resources, but they are gatekept. You have to pay. You have to have this so and so membership. I think that's one thing I'd also like to congratulate Fassara for having free trainings. I think this year they've done about three free trainings on equipping teachers. So I think we'll need more of these initiatives, more of these free trainings, because the teachers who actually need these trainings, as you mentioned, cannot afford it. Imagine asking a teacher in a primary school that doesn't even have an ICT lab in Zamfara State and manages to have a mobile phone to pay for a training, and she'll be looking at you, and what's the use of that to her? Well, yes, when we make these trainings free and more accessible, we can actually begin to change the narrative and improve education in Nigeria. Now, talking about changing the narrative, if you had the power, Mrs. Efe, to change just one thing about how we approach education in Nigeria, what would it be?
That's an interesting question. For me, it would be changing it from the garbage in, garbage out method, the rote memorization, exam scores, you must doing this, you must score this, you're expected to score 70 in. I remember then in secondary school, if you score 24 below 20, they give you 24 lashes. If you score 40, it's 12 lashes. If you score 50, it's one very hot stroke of cane. So there's this fear that I must, and I will cram and cram, and at the end, immediately I write that paper, I have forgotten everything that I have crammed because I just want to pass that exam. I was not reading to critically think. I was not reading for problem solving. I was not reading for practical application and knowledge. So to me, if I was going to change, I would scrap the whole exam scores and all, and let's focus on building the students' critical thinking. They should be able to see a problem and prefer solutions to that problem. They should be able to see something and transfer that knowledge from the textbook into practical aspects of their life. They should be able to retain knowledge 5 to 10 years. You ask them back, they can apply that knowledge. Because truly, there's a lot of us that we've gone for exams. If you ask us what we wrote, we don't remember. And that's just the truth.
Oti Pari, it has finished, it has gone, lol. And yes, you're actually correct. You're actually correct. I think the exam system, while maybe in the 1970s and for as long as it has existed, has been a good metric. But now, as the world keeps changing, we need to change. The education sector needs to change with it. We keep seeing countries, for example, in Europe, who do not even write exams till their students are almost done with what we call secondary school. They are not focused on the exam, but on actual learning. And we see their economy is doing better than us. We see their education rate, everything, it's actually better. They have it better than us. So we need to move from being exam focused to actually be more practical focused, learning and application focused. So it has been a wonderful time with you, Mrs. Ife. You see, we've talked about the real, the relatable, we've talked about many, many things during this EduConvo, this special EduConvo with you. And if you're watching and listening to us and you have a comment or a question for Mrs. Ife, you can please do drop that in the questions chat below and we'll get to you. Well, Mrs. Ife, I'd like to ask you if I'm watching this EduConvo and I really like the direction you're going with this, with this tutoring, and I'm a teacher, or I want to tutor. How do I go about that? How do I start?
The first thing you need to change is your mindset. We need to, a lot of teachers still have the mindset that there is a one method to learn. So you want to become a tutor today. Tutor is different from teaching in the classroom. Change your mindset. You need to embrace the journey of discovery. You need to learn, understand that you do not know everything. You need to know that you are also on a journey to learn. You need to be willing to sacrifice to start the journey of tutoring. You need to be willing to unlearn, relearn, and unlearn whatever learning is in front. Because truth is, if you're not ready to learn, you're going to fail halfway. If you're not ready to adapt, you're going to fall. So you need to adjust that mindset. You need to be able to go the extra mile, because tutoring children online really requires you to do more than is needed for the child to understand, because this child is not seeing you physically. So you need to patch up that in-person gap that is missing by going the extra mile to make that
Mm.
child feel like you are there with them. So if you can do this, willing to learn, you are good to go.
Oh, thank you very, very much for that. So it starts with the mindset. We have to change our mindset, people. Educators want to be educators. We have to change our mindset. There is more than one way to learn, because I'm just looking at some of the comments and they're actually on how can we get started into tutoring. So don't start looking for a tutoring job immediately. Change your mindset first for you to be actually successful at tutoring. And I'm sure if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to us at Fassara, and then we get in touch with Mrs. Ife. And maybe, who knows, we can come back on another session of EduConvo to answer those questions, because I believe we would have many more EduConvos together. Now, we'd like to thank you very much for spending a wonderful time with us this evening. We really appreciate taking out the time, and you being so jovial and a wonderful guest on our Edu Comfort this evening. But if you could leave every educator, every parent, every learner, every student who is watching this now, what piece of advice about personalized learning would you give them?
Like I said, it would be changing the mindset, embrace the journey of discovery. For parents, it's not just about the grades, it's about what your child can apply. For teachers, every learner is unique. Your job is to find their stars and help them shine brightly.
Mm, I love that. Help them find their stars and help them find their stars and help them to shine brightly. Wonderful, wonderful quote. I think that's a good quote we're going to take from Mrs. Effect this evening. So thank you very, very much for spending your evening with us in this interesting and groundbreaking EduConvo on tutoring in the 21st century, focused on personalized learning. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time. So, to our viewers, please like, share, subscribe, and do stay tuned for our next EduConvo. And as always, stay in touch. Thank you.